Mississippi Farm Bureau from The Athletic, covering the New Orleans Saints. Catherine Terrell joins us right now. Catherine, please tell me if I'm mispronouncing your name. Like, I have this thing with Terrell and Terrell, and I have no idea, and I'm just guessing, so you say it, and I promise I won't screw it up again. How about that?
It's actually Terrell, but you were close.
There we go. I mean, there were really only two options there, and I finished second, so I wasn't that close. We do appreciate your time. If you're not following her on Twitter, you should at @Cat_Terrell, Terrell. So, we're really, really close to the start of this season. How do you feel about this Saints team?
I think it's kind of hard to know what you're going to get from the team. I think they still have a lot of holes as they go into the season. Defensive tackle, cornerback, and wide receiver being the biggest hole. But the trade for Bradley Roby kind of changes things starting in week 2. So you kind of look at week 1 as experimental week, kind of see what they can do with probably rookie Paulson Adebo at cornerback, and then you got some unknown guys at defensive tackle, and they'll kind of just use this game to figure it out.
What's the vibe around the team? I mean, having to kind of abandon New Orleans for Texas for a couple of weeks. Got the news yesterday that it looks like they're going to be back sooner by a week or two than expected. Opener in a neutral site where they're the home team. Just a lot going on in addition to the on-the-field stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they would all like to be home, but they're kind of just trying to embrace the situation that they're in and maybe use it as a time to bond as a team, similar to when they were spending a week on the West Coast 2 years ago and then went out and beat Seattle. I think all of the Saints kind of understand that there's a lot of people back home that, you know, are in really dire situations and that they're kind of lucky to be where they are, even if it's not ideal. But, you know, hopefully that they use that to come together. But it's definitely not the situation anyone expected that they would be in at this point, you know, going to Florida to play a game that should have been played in the Superdome. It's kind of crazy.
Two-part question, which you're not supposed to do, but I'll do it anyway. What does Sean Payton think? What do you think? Based on what you've seen and what he's seen of Jameis Winston kind of through the preseason, through this practice, into game number 1.
Well, I think Sean likes what he's seen from Winston starting all the way back in the offseason. I think Winston has done all the right things, and he won that job fair and square by being more consistent in the preseason games. There's still a lot to work on with Winston. Obviously, the turnovers is the big thing everyone focuses on, although I don't think that was as big of a deal as maybe people brought it out to be this summer. So Sean, I think, believes in Jameis. I think that, like I said, it's kind of an unknown. I don't think the turnovers are going to dominate the season like people might think, but I do think there's going to be a lot of growing pains, especially because I'm not sure the Saints did enough to fix the wide receiver position. Luckily, Marquez Callaway really, really came on this summer, and it's kind of turned into a number 1. But other than that, it's really kind of iffy as to what that group can do.
Catherine Terrell on your radio. She covers the Saints at The Athletic. You can follow her on Twitter at @Cat_Terrell. Call me crazy here. I feel like because of the Drew/Jameis/Taysom storyline and wide receivers and Michael Thomas and cornerbacks, we haven't talked at all about Alvin Kamara. And maybe that's just us. Maybe that's not in other places. Is he flying under the radar going into this year?
Well, I don't think Kamara can ever fly under the radar at this point. Certainly not since most of the country watching saw what he did on Christmas Day with his 6 touchdowns. Yeah. I think everyone just knows that Kamara is the most sure thing the Saints have. He's almost boring in that way, and that there's just not that much to talk about because everyone knows he's going to go out and do his thing. And he didn't really play much in the preseason because he didn't need to. All the focus was on the running backs behind him because that was such a question mark until Tony Jones Jr. kind of won that job. So, no, trust me, the Packers are probably trying to figure out how to put their entire defensive game plan around stopping Kamara, because he is the one sure thing they have, and everyone else on offense, except the offensive line, definitely can't say that yet.
Kat, when I think about Taysom Hill, I just don't know what to think. Sean says they've got a plan on how they're going to use him. We had the comments from training camp or somewhere along the way in the preseason where he says, I'm not blocking, defensive tackles anymore, lost some weight, put everything he had into trying to win this quarterback job. And yet, at what he was, I feel like there are 30 teams in the NFL that would love to have him on the roster doing what he has done. What is the role? What's the role for Taysom Hill now?
I think it's going to be similar to what we saw a few years ago. He is going to be a part of the offense. You're going to find a role for him as a pass catcher or maybe a hybrid type of tight end. I'm not sure how it's going to work with the weight loss, but I've seen tight ends that are worse blockers and probably not as big as Taysom, and they made it work. And I think he's probably still going to come in and run the read option and maybe participate a little as a quarterback, but his days of maybe being the direct backup might be over. But they're not going to let him just sit on the bench. He makes too much money for that, and he's too unique of a player to kind of toss aside. So Sean Payton will figure out something, but it'll probably be similar to what we've seen in the past.
Do you think he's unhappy now, or is he going to settle into this role and realize, hey, this is really not a terrible way to make a living?
Well, I'm sure he's not happy, especially after kind of devoting his offseason to trying to be a quarterback, but there's not really anything he can do about it. So I think he's going to be a team player. He was participating with the tight ends in practice yesterday and with the quarterbacks today, and also, ran some routes. So I think he'll embrace it as much as he can, and then next year, I guess, if he still wants to be a quarterback, he can try to pursue it elsewhere. I don't really think there's anything else he can do at this point.
Yeah, it certainly makes a lot of sense. When you look at this opening game against the Packers, what do the Saints have to do to legitimately give themselves a chance to win against a really good and mostly complete team?
Well, I think they've got to take advantage of some of the inconsistencies on the interior of the Packers' offensive line to try to get to Aaron Rodgers. That might equal each other out because the Saints have issues on the interior of their defensive line, but maybe they can figure out a way to take advantage by moving players around. Really, it's going to come down, I think, to their pass rush because their secondary is such a question mark this week, especially if a rookie is going to be starting next to Marshawn Lattimore. So it all really is going to start with Cam Jordan and company, and I think that area of the team has so much to prove. Cam Jordan needs a bounce-back year. Marcus Davenport needs a year where he's healthy and productive, and then first-round pick Peyton Turner, I think maybe since he's been hurt, he has a bit of a pass, but you still want to see something out of him. So really you just got to get to Rodgers and find a way to keep that streak of holding quarterbacks to under 300 yards going.
Last thing for you, let's go back to where we started with the Bradley Roby trade. Third round, sixth round, do you feel like the price was right? And two, even though he's not available week one, what does it mean for the Saints to get him as a starting corner?
Well, absolutely. I think the compensation was good. The fact that the Texans were willing to take on a large portion of his salary is very surprising and kind of unprecedented. So the Saints kind of got off easy there. But I've been saying since Janoris Jenkins was cut that they had to find another corner, and it just hasn't worked so far. And even when Patrick Robinson was projected to be the starting corner, I just didn't think that there was much that was going to come out of going back to Robinson or Ken Crawley. There's a reason they're not starters anymore. So this is a great move for the Saints. They finally have their starter next to Lattimore, and then they do have insurance with Ken Crawley whenever he gets healthy. So it was a completely necessary move, and hopefully it works out.
Catherine, thanks so much for your time. Great visiting with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
That's Catherine.